At age 14, Morgan Stickney was ranked in the top 20 in the country as an able-bodied distance swimmer and set a goal of competing in the 2020 Olympics. But a broken bone in her foot and a medical condition that prevents adequate blood circulation to her limbs led to years of intense pain and an addiction to opioids. Finally, in 2018, when she was 20 years old, she agreed to have her lower left leg amputated. And I'm sure for many young people, that would have ended all hope of further competition. But after her surgery, she returned home to Bedford, New Hampshire, ditched the painkillers, recalibrated her life. This is somebody else's words, you understand. She learned how to get around on one foot, jumped in the pool again, and switched her event to the 400 meters, much shorter. And in almost no time, her performances were good enough that she was invited to train at the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic headquarters in Colorado Springs. But then the same condition attacked the right leg, and the doctors performed a second amputation below the knee in October 2019. And once again, Stickney went back to work, first learning how to sit up in bed, and then how to get in and out of a wheelchair, and then how to walk on two prosthetic limbs. A few months later, she dove back into the pool again, this time with no lower legs, but still determined to compete at the highest level. On each step of her journey, of course, and with every milestone she achieved, she had the support of her parents, Tony and Sherry. Currently, 4 minutes, 40 seconds, and change, again, somebody else's words. This is the time marker, the destination, drawing Morgan Stickney ever closer to her goal. For over a year, she's been training now diligently in a pool in Cary, North Carolina, slicing off seconds in the pursuit of the world record. The precise figure is 4 minutes, 40 seconds, .33. And it belongs to Lakecia Patterson, who swam in the 400 meter in the Rio Paralympics in 2016. Patterson's time is the current world record, and it is Stickney's ambition to pass it. Now, I wonder how many people in the world, after losing their lower leg, would have given up hope of ever competing or ever doing anything, and then losing the other leg, the same thing. But somehow, Morgan Stickney found purpose and found a way to keep her goals alive and her hope alive. I started a series time before last on the idea of hope. And what I want to focus on is the idea of hopelessness today. I know that kind of seems strange, but I think to some degree, hopelessness is necessary in order to propel us to find something, because I think there's something deep down inside of all of us that needs hope. Now, for Morgan, and I don't want to take away from her persistence and her spirit, I think having parents who support her, having some technology that allowed her to get around, gave her that hope, and I think that that's true with us. Hope isn't something that we find just all by ourselves, but rather it's something I think that grows out of finding it elsewhere. But I think when we look at the world, I think hopelessness is kind of built in. And I wonder if God thought, as Adam and Eve first sinned, if we humans were hopeless. You know, when you think of God looking at Adam and Eve, you know, he might say, you know, I gave you one command, just one, not 10, not 613, not 1,000, just one. And you broke it. You both are hopeless. And then, of course, they start having children. There's Cain and there's Abel, and you know the story. Cain is Cain's sacrifice to God is not accepted, and Abel's is. Cain becomes jealous and angry, and he kills his brother. And so, God looking at him must have thought, he's your brother, you're flesh and blood. You're supposed to love him. That's the way I created the world, for family to love each other. You're not to hate him. You're not to be envious. You're not to be jealous. You're not to be angry. You're hopeless. And then as time goes on, in Genesis chapter 6, God looks at the whole world. And it says that wickedness was great. It was everywhere. And God saw that every intent on the part of humans in their heart was evil. And God says, I'm grieving over you. And he looked at them and said, you're hopeless. And then, of course, God began his work, and we'll come back to it. But God chose Abraham and Sarah, called them out of the Ur of Chaldees to the land of Haran, and then on to what we call the land of Canaan. And, of course, told them that their descendants would own the land one day or be heirs to it. But he told Abraham that he was going to have an heir. And, of course, they went through this process where Abraham thought, well, I'll take the oldest born servant in my household and adopt him, and he becomes the heir. And God says, no, you're going to have a son. And, of course, then Sarah, when she knows she's not going to have a son because she's too old. And so she gives her slave, Hagar, her handmaiden, to Abraham, and Ishmael is born, and God says, oh, no, you and Sarah are going to have a son together. Now, in chapter 17, Abraham laughs at the thought because he's 99 and Sarah's 89. And then when Sarah hears it, she laughs too. And so they're thinking, we have no heir. Wait, what? We're going to have a son? An heir together? Wait, he's 99 and I'm 89. I'm 99 and she's 89. No way. This is a hopeless situation. Nobody has children at this age. It's hopeless. Later on, Abraham's and Sarah's descendants through Jacob are in bondage in Egypt. And of course, when they go down there, they're fully welcomed by Pharaoh and by all the people. And they get the best land and they settle in. And then a Pharaoh rises up who doesn't know Joseph. And that means he doesn't care about Joseph. He's got another agenda. And so he enslaves them and makes them work hard. And they're building these storage cities in Egypt. The Egyptians are afraid of them. They're getting numerous, and so that's why they're enslaving them. And so along comes Moses, and he's sent by God to Pharaoh and says, let my people go. And Pharaoh says, no, in fact, you're going to become lazy as a result of this, so I'm going to fix things. So he told all the taskmasters, don't gather straw to make the bricks, to help in making the bricks for the people. Make them go gather it, but I want the same quota. And of course, when the people complain, Pharaoh says, you're just a bunch of lazy no-goods, so get to it. Well, then they find out that Moses is the one that's involved, and so they go to Moses, and they said to Moses, may the Lord look upon you and judge you, for you have made us odious in Pharaoh's sight and in the sight of his servants to put a sword in their hand to kill us. So, you say, leave us alone. You're making things worse. This is a hopeless situation. And then there's the story of Elijah. I really love the story of Elijah. He challenges the prophets of Baal to a duel, my God versus your God. And Elijah's really saying, my God is bigger than your God. Actually, that's because your gods don't exist. But anyway, you remember the story. He challenges them, and for most of the morning, the prophets of Baal, they prance around and they ask Baal to send down fire from heaven to consume their sacrifice, and it doesn't happen. So Elijah sets up the sacrifice for God, digs a moat around it, and pours water over it, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And then he stands back and says, Lord, please consume it with fire from heaven. And boom, it happens. And of course, the people, they're wow, Elijah, he's the star. He's the guy. He's our man. And so they listen to him and they kill the prophets of Baal. But then Jezebel says, well, I'm not listening to you. In fact, I want you dead. And when Elijah finds out, he runs away. And God takes him down to Mount Horeb, the place where Moses saw God. And of course, Elijah down there, he goes into there and God says, why are you here? And, there's a fire, there's a wind, there's an earthquake, there's all these big, powerful things that happen. And anyway, Elijah, God says, why are you here? And he says, well, I defeated the prophets of Baal and Jezebel wants to kill me and there's no one left but me. I'm all alone. It's hopeless. So, I think that hopelessness comes into the world that way. I think it's kind of built in no matter what. I mean, some people might find hope, but hopelessness sort of enters the world. In our food pantry, we recently had a man come in. His wife died recently, and he's got 5 kids. I'm pretty sure that things feel hopeless to him at the time. Another situation that I knew of, years and years, and this is a long time ago. There was a young couple. They had 3 boys. The older one was autistic and somewhat difficult to deal with. The 2 younger boys were more normal. And one day, Mom was home with the 2 boys, and she was upstairs taking a nap. The 2 boys were playing around, and you know how boys are. I remember what it was like. I think they were 6 or 7. And one of them, I think, accidentally started a fire because they ran upstairs because they couldn't get out. And by that time, the fire had spread and it was impossible to get back downstairs. And I'm pretty sure they admitted to their mom that they had accidentally started it. Well, she decided the only way out was to jump out of the window, the 2nd story. And when she got down there, she would tell the boys to jump and she would try to catch them. Moms can be very, very courageous and strong. Well, when she jumped down, she tumbled and hit her head and it knocked her out. And so she laid there and the boys didn't know whether she was alive or dead. And so they just stayed there and the fire eventually consumed them. And unfortunately, she couldn't handle the death of those 2 boys and she couldn't handle dealing with her autistic older son. And so the couple divorced. There was, I think, a lot of hopelessness on her part. Hopelessness becomes a part of our world. God created a place of paradise for us to flourish, but we ruined it, and sin came in and changed everything. The ground is cursed, and our work is cursed, and our relationship with God is cursed. And hopelessness becomes a part of everyday life. I think hopelessness comes in because we can't see a way out. We see it in our everyday lives. We feel despair. We feel defeat. We can't win or gain what we want, and so we don't. We can't feel good or excited, and we can't find a pathway, and nobody's on my side. In fact, a psychologist I was reading says these statements sound all too familiar. Nothing I do is making a difference. My circumstances will never improve. What's the point of even trying? The pain is never going to improve. I'm in a dark place and can't get out. I'll never be happy. I'll never find love. And so built into our world is this sense of hopelessness, I think. And of course, a lot of it, and I'm not trying to criticize folks, but a lot of it is built upon unfulfilled desires that we have. I want to become a teacher. I want to become a doctor, a lawyer. I want to become a police officer. I want to become a firefighter. I want to become an EMT. there's all kinds of things that we want to do. And I was reading, or I was listening to a commercial, Southern Hampshire University, and this fellow was doing I guess he's one of the administrators there, and he was talking to a graduating group, and he says, in our world, talent is distributed evenly. But he said, opportunity is not. And that's oftentimes what happens, is that we have these desires. We want to do our, fulfill our passion or whatever. And we don't have the opportunity to do so. And because of that, our dreams, our desires are unfulfilled. We get depressed and we slip into hopelessness. We don't know the way out. And what's interesting is, and I don't know whether this is true or not, but I do know that Dr. Carl Menninger wrote a book called, Whatever Happened to Sin. But anyway, he's a world-famous psychiatrist, and he was answering some questions after giving a lecture on mental health. And one person said, well, what advice would you give to someone who felt a nervous breakdown coming on? And of course, most people would expect us to go consult a psychiatrist like me. But he said, lock up your house, go across the railroad tracks, find someone in need, and do something to help that person. I thought, wow. There's an idea that, if you think your situation is helpless, wait till you find, somebody who's even worse. And that can, of course, help you and help you up. There was another psychologist that I was reading. He said that hopelessness can point to a limit in our own beliefs. And he said the reason why we feel so hopeless, it's not because it's rooted in reality, but it's instead a false narrative about our abilities or circumstances. Maybe you tell yourself that you really don't deserve a raise or loving friends. Maybe you tell yourself that you're not smart or creative or capable. But I found that really kind of interesting. It's the idea that you create this false narrative. And I think that that's true for us in the bigger picture too. That we don't see that we've created a false narrative about not only ourselves, but about the world in general. The world is a terrible place and the world is against me. And I think that we need to see that there's a way out of that. 2 Kings chapter 6, verses 15 through 19 is a short little story in the life of Elisha, who was Elijah's who followed Elijah in ministry to the 10 northern tribes. Elisha had a much longer, he did a little bit, he did more signs than Elijah did. Both of them are quite important. But anyway, the king Aram, the king of Aram is trying to fight the king of Israel and defeat them. And Elisha keeps warning the king of Israel where the king of Aram is, what he's doing and so forth. And the king of Aram, of course, gets really mad. He thinks there's a spy in his own country, and he accuses the men of being spies. And somebody says, no. There's a prophet in Israel. Elisha is his name, and he's the one who's getting the information, and he's in the city of Dothan. And so it says in verse 14 of 2 Kings 6 that the king of Aram sent horses and chariots and a great army, and they came by night and surrounded the city. And then what happens is the servant of Elisha, risen up early, he went out, and behold, there was army with horses and chariots circling the city. And he's going, oh! And he goes to Elisha and says, alas, my master, what shall we do? What shall we do? It's hopeless. We're defeated. He's going to kill us all because of your predictions and so forth. So Elijah answered and said, do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And so Elisha prayed and said, Lord, open the eyes that he may see. And so the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he saw, behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. So you see, Elisha changed reality and the narrative for the servant. Well, God did. You let them see that there's a bigger reality than what's in front of us. Our world creates the sense that it's hopeless, that we're not going to get ahead, we're not going to get what we want. And of course, I'm not trying to, in this lesson, give you hope for the dreams that you have for your individual lives. And I'm not trying to keep you from pursuing those dreams. Go right ahead. But what I want to do is to see the big picture, that a lot of hopelessness that people feel in the world and that we feel, that's part and parcel of the sin that's entered this world. We might have the desire and the ability to do all kinds of things and not the opportunity. But you see, in the long run, that may not matter. I want to go back, though, over some of the things I said earlier about some of the big stories back in the Bible. For Adam and Eve, even though God, might have looked and said, "Wow, you guys are hopeless. I gave you one command, but I'm going to send someone who will take care of all of this." And then for Cain, he said, "I'm going to put a mark on you so nobody will take his revenge against you." And I don't know whether that's a sign of grace to Cain or not, but it kind of seems that in a way it is. Then with the whole world, it looks like, okay, that's the end. Humanity will not find a place with God, and along comes Noah and the ark. And then with Abraham and Sarah, of course, when Sarah hears these three messengers from God, who appear to be humans, say that Abraham and Sarah are going to have a son in a year's time, and Sarah laughs, and they say, "Is anything too difficult for the Lord?" And of course, Abraham and Sarah should know that by now. And then for Israel in bondage, here the Israelites come and they tell Moses, "Hey, listen, you're causing us more problems. Just leave us alone. It's hopeless." And God says, "Well, here are 10 plagues, miracles that demonstrate my power over Egypt." And they go free. And then, Elijah, again, he's in that cave and he sees these big, powerful displays of God, and then the small, still voice, and he says, "You trusted in big things, but just go and do my will. Do what I ask you to do, and you'll find hope." And actually, I think in that, what's interesting is that Elijah went back, and as he was, moving through doing God's will, he found out that there were 7,000 who hadn't bowed the knee to Baal, and he also found out that he had a successor in Elisha. And then God says, "Well, you've done your duty. Come up with me." So I think that what we need to see is that there's we pursue our small dreams, and we have hopes and so forth about things that we want to do. But we need to see that there's this big picture, this big hope, and that's eternity. When we look around the world, it seems like the world offers us no hope. It really doesn't. And we need to understand that Jesus came to provide us with eternity. There's a TV show I haven't seen. It's called The Leftovers. It's on HBO, which I don't have access to. But anyway, Megan Basham, who's in World Magazine, she reviews TV series and films and so forth. And she says that sometimes, even though a TV show isn't really religious, it reveals the mindset of our culture. And if you don't know what The Leftovers are, it's based on a book of the same name. And what it is it's about 140 million people who suddenly disappear. Boom, they're just gone. And then what's left is, the book and the movie deals with how people are dealing with this. She says that it follows the lives of citizens in a small town as they come to grips with this event, which caused some 2% of the world's population to simply disappear, and depicts with uncomfortable authenticity the psychological toll it would take on society to have demonstrable evidence that they've been left behind. The Leftovers doesn't claim to be a biblical depiction of the events, the rapture that people believe in, but rather, and it doesn't even say that God was responsible. It just concerns itself with the burden, the abandonment, the loneliness, and the despair of those who didn't depart. They wonder, is there something on the other side? Is there hope over there that we don't know about? And so those who remain cannot make sense of this departure. Now, this is, I think, Megan writing. Some are now living an aimless existence, robotically walking through life, more like zombies than human beings. Others are angry, despairing, hopeless. Interestingly, though, many have simply chosen to act as if nothing ever happened. And she notes, even if it doesn't recognize the gospel, it recognizes the problem the gospel solves. Without the love and grace inherent in a relationship with the Creator, this burden and abandonment, sin and loneliness is all that is ultimately left to the created. And there are somebody who wrote, there are no hopeless situations. There are only people who have grown hopeless about them. That's what our world is like. And that's why God sent his Son. Jesus provided us with hope. He provided us with a God who cares about each of us individually, because Jesus took my place, your place, everybody's place. He didn't just do, one big sacrifice that God said, "Oh, that's pretty nice. I like that. You're the best of the best." No, Jesus did it on everyone's behalf. So God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. So you see, the world, when we look at it, breeds hopelessness in all of the situations. Some people might find hope in small measure. Some people might find hope in fulfilling their dreams and so forth. But when you stop and really look at it, one of these days, all of us are going to depart this world. And we have to ask ourselves, is there anything on that other side that we're going to have to deal with? And Jesus says yes. And here's the way to deal with it. By my dying on the cross and then being resurrected. Death seems to take away our hope, but resurrection brings it back. And that's exactly what Jesus did for us. So life isn't hopeless. Hope can be found in Jesus Christ. God bless.